So here's the short version of what I did. I had to clean out the inside of my axle, and I used that to remove all the rust ultimately. I cleaned off all of the big bits of rust by taking one of these nice pieces of Scotch-Brite on a little 1/4-inch shaft, and I spun it inside my axle on this extension tube that I made, and I had to fold it over like so to get it in there. And then I scrubbed off all the rust with this big old long extension shaft, and then I ran at least one roll of paper towel through each side of my axle to get all the residue out. Oh yeah, the most important part. Get that stuff. It's awesome. It cleans everything off. It'll also eat your gloves alive. So don't get it on your hands. Then, once I got all the grease out, I had to plug up my axle so I could fill it. So I made this interesting plug apparatus. So this would go on the outside where the hub is. That would go on the inside where the diff is. And it would squeeze together because of the screws. It's essentially a big long piece of all thread, about 40-ish inches. And then I could fill it up via the funnel with liquid rust remover. And then I ran rags with water per the instructions to clean out the vapor rust from the axle, and then I coated it with bearing grease. Hopefully that was the right decision, but it was to prevent rust from reoccurring. For further details, continue watching. So I got the plug out, and yeah, that was nice and clear. I mean, you watched me put it in. I guess it's not terribly unclear, but yeah, thinking maybe I should fully clean out the inside of my axle when I'm done getting things torn down. Drain plug works pretty good though. Okay, so the cover's off, obviously. Had I paid attention when I was doing this last time, I would have noticed some very key things. First and foremost, I should have checked the condition of the surfaces of at least a few of the teeth on the exposed gears. Like, oh, let's get in here and look. You'll notice on the spider gears there is some very obvious discoloration and what I would consider to be surface pitting. Let's see, let's get in on that one. Brightness, go down. So there we can kind of see that the surface is being pitted. And on that, it's not so bad, I guess, because, you know, it's the spider gears, and as long as you're not turning, everything's dandy. Those won't move. But in general, I like to, you know, stay on the road, which doesn't go in a straight line forever. So those are going away, which is not cool. And what's more is we'll notice very similar pitting on my ring gear, which is mildly alarming, although I suppose it's part of the reason I'm in here doing this. Yeah, that pitting no good. That means at least that part of the gear is being worn out, and in time, a very short amount of time, it'll wear out all the other metal parts in here, including the axle bearings that I had just replaced about 6 months ago on both sides of this axle. So I'm definitely glad I'm catching this now and not a year from now, after many thousands of miles. Alright, so here I am pulling my half shafts out. I just pulled the other one out and there was a significant amount of new corrosion that has developed on it. Focus. Anyway, this one looks way better than the other one did. But even still, I mean, when I put these in, when I did my bearings, I had scrubbed all that off. It was clean. And now, in 6 months' time, whatever was in this batch of axle grease, or hypoid gear oil, whatever, has caused this corrosion to manifest itself. I mean, that's no good. I don't know, I'm gonna have to poke around on Google to figure this out. See what the cause could have been. But I gotta get that out of there. That's just wrong. Come on, focus for me. Nope. Maybe? Down the pipe. There we go. Yeah. That is cancerous looking. Maybe it's just condensation, who knows? Because it's not on the bottom, which is promising. But it definitely means there was water in here at some point. No good. Well, now that we know that I've got to clean out my axle tubes, I've come up with a tool, or at least an idea for a tool, to do so. I've got a sacrificial closet auger, picked up from the local Home Depot. Any brand would work, I'm sure. What I'm going to do is cut the end off where it's expanded here, and leave just this section that's the same size all the way down. And I'm going to backfeed this bit into it, and then I think I'm going to weld the end of the wire onto some portion of this. These are my sacrificial tools. Before I do that, I'm going to make sure this actually fits in the axle tube. Nope, need the smaller one. There's no way that's going to fit in there. I think my eyes were bigger than my memory, or vice versa. Well, it was a tight fit, but this seemed to work. I had to sort of shove this in and then work the wires down around the sides of the tube in the opening. I haven't looked in here yet, so this is a surprise. Oh, that's better than it was. I guess I'll have more work to do on the near side. Oh, no. Give me more light. Oh, bummer. Anyway, not too terrible. But still a far cry from perfect. So I will be doing that a few more times. So this thing works okay. It was not particularly easy to put together because I had to use a bearing puller to hold the cable in place right near the base of the brush, and then use my press to kind of shove the shaft into the coil. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm making a long, stiff, rigid pipe there so that I can shove it into an axle shaft on one side, since I have most access on this side, and then I will assemble in the center of the housing the brush part, and then shove shove the brush and the whole assembly into the axle tube on the other side and run it in and out with a drill. And how this is going to work is I'm going to weld on a 5/8 grade 8 washer to this 1/2 inch electrical conduit, 1/2 inch nominal, and I've ground off all the plating on the outside on all the parts so the welds go better than they did on my other attempts. And then I'm going to weld this 5/8 grade 8 nut to the washer that's attached here, so I've got some actual meat to grab onto. And then this is just a placeholder bolt. I'm going to use this bolt, which I chucked up in my lathe to make a 1/4 inch hole for these brushes. It was like 0.248, I think, for the diameter of the drill bit used, and that's what, 2/1000ths shy of an actual 1/4 inch. And then what I did, since I have grade 8 bolts here and they're very difficult to work with, I put it in my press against this bolt here, and I tried to line up everything so that the pressure, or the center of the shaft, was aligned with the bolt. And I had to use another grade 8 bolt sandwiched on here like this, with the grade 8 bolt across there and this on top of the whole mashup. And then everything has a sandwich aligned underneath, centered and underneath the press itself. And what that allowed me to do was indent this bolt a little bit so I can permanently force feed a brush bit into this bolt. And I'd imagine maybe at some point in the future I'd want to shove it out. Don't know if I'd just discard the bolt at that point or try and pry it out, but that will hold it fairly securely. And then I can run this in and out at whatever RPM I want. And that will help me to run the brush at much higher speed than what I can turn by hand with that closet auger. So hopefully, when all this is put together, I'll be able to actually clean the inside of my axle housing. Man, that's annoying. Oh yeah, one last bit. How am I going to drive it? Well, I'm taking this longish tent stake and I'm going to weld it on the other end. I figured this part doesn't have to be quite as exact as that one. And even this arguably doesn't have to be centered. It adds to the cleaning effect if it's offset, I suppose. So this could probably have been done on a drill press with not grade 8 bolts. I had to do it in a lathe. It took me about 30 minutes to cut that hole, and it's 1 1/4 inches deep. But that's here nor there. So I'm going to glue this all together and see if it works. Alright, well, I got it all glued together now. It was ugly. And again, I used my favorite 6011. And yeah, so I've got the tube sort of tack welded fairly securely all the way around to the washer, and then the washer to the nut. And I noticed as I had on the inside the tube was starting to melt to the bolt, so the bolt got a little jammed in there. It was a bit of work to get it out. But now it's out, and I also have the tent stake glued onto the other side. Obviously a precision fitting. It'll add to the cleaning effect, I hope. And I hope to just grab this end with a chuck and spin it at whatever RPM. And I've taken my brush out of my sacrificial water, and gravity works. So I got the brush, I jammed it in, or jammed the shaft into my bolt with my press, and I'll thread the bolt down into the end here till it hits the gummy parts of the threads on the inside, and then I'll spin the lock nut down to hold it all in place. And that's fairly secure. It took about 500 pounds of pressure to shove this piece into the bolt, so I don't think it'll spin at all. There's nothing for it to catch on in my axle either, so once it's in and going, it'll just be in and out and just hopefully cleans all that needs to be cleaned, because I certainly can't reach in there otherwise. So I'll assemble this and see how it goes. And by assembly I mean in this position, so I can actually clean out that hole, because yeah, that won't fit into the outer axle tube hole as is, so that was the whole purpose of this kit. So yeah, I'll put that on and start reaming and see what happens. Alright, the moment of truth. If this isn't redneck, I don't know what is. Oh boy. Well, that works. Hopefully the thing is still attached. I'm going to give this a good go with a couple hands. This looks like fun. You know what? I dare say that worked pretty well. And I hosed some chem tool in here prior to brushing this. So this is my first inspection of this. Oh, focus. No, it won't focus. Focus. Maybe. Well, looks like it got a majority of it. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. Oh, maybe. Cool. I think what I'll do is focus a little bit more effort towards the middle here, because I see some right about there. And otherwise, that works really well. Highly recommend this method. It was a bit of work. Took at least 2 hours to get it set up the way I have it. Ow. Oh, there's a light there. But I'm able to stand over on the driver's side of the vehicle, and I can see the, you know, from about this angle, I can see the tool going in and out, and it's short enough I can do it with one arm more or less. And yeah, it's easy to keep it in there, and it stops hard at the end because the, you know, it necks down where the hub is, so the tool won't go out the other side of the axle. But that's what came out just now. That's mostly chem tool, I think. That's yucky looking. Yeah, that's awesome. So hopefully this doesn't happen to you, but this is the way to clean it, I think. So onward. Okay, so I'm doing a visual check, so I gotta swab out all the nastiness. I bought a bag of sacrificial little wash rags or whatever. They're about 12 inches by 12 inches square, and I folded it up and wrapped it around, and now I'm gonna zip tie it on so I can run it on the what's-a-thingy to spin it. So when I'll run a few of these through to get it all clean, and then see if I've got any rust left. If I don't, then I think what I'm going to do is maybe, well, I'll decide if I'm going to do chemical rust treatment or just hit it with some axle grease or something that'll stick onto the sidewall of the axle without the aid of sloshing, because I think that's what the problem was. I got moisture in there and it just kind of stayed up here and the oil stayed down there, and the moisture with the corrosive properties was eating against the metal with no oil to stop it. So I think some heavy duty grease that just sticks will do just fine to stop rust in the future. So the brush is done well, but I'm switching to one of these because I've got some buildup on the inside of my axle tube that is not coming off with the brush. It does come off when I hit it with an O-ring pick. I need something more aggressive, so I'm going to try one of these and see what happens. I'm hoping it'll just buckle over and fit nice and snug against the outer surface of the or the inner surface of the tube. So I'll give this a whirl in my custom bolt tool holder thingy. Well, I actually got that out. I'm impressed with myself. Took a little bit of work with a pair of tire irons opposite of each other, just working it back and forth, and then this eventually came out. I think it helped that it was still had some WD-40 in here from when I cut the hole in the first place, so it was fairly well lubricated. But next time I think I would definitely do a softer bolt and install a set screw if I were to make this an actual tool. Alright, I just ran that in and out for a little bit, and looks like it got some stuff. This is the first time I've looked down this end. I started at the other end, or peeked into the other end. It looks a lot better now. And granted, I've also run a bunch of rags through at this point to clean out a bunch of the gunk, but it's knocked off all the high stuff from what I can tell. Focus? No, maybe, yes. So, yeah, this one was definitely the way to go, just to clear everything out. Looks like it's done a good job of resurfacing stuff as much as could be done. Still not an ideal situation because, as you can see, there's corrosion and whatnot still on the wall. I'll have to poke at that and make sure it's not going to flake off. But if it's just whatever, cosmetic, then I'll leave it be. Hit it with some grease, call it good. Do the other side, because I want to get my axle back together someday. So a recap of now what I found to work. This piece with the paint removal Scotch-Brite what's-a-thingy on the end of my custom bolt, fed or driven by my extra Uber extension to get the big stuff out. And then what I'm doing now to clean out the fine cleaning out of the axle, and I'm just feeding paper towel in through the center, shoving like, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet of these towels, kind of loosely wadded up, and then just ramming it through with my extension shaft. And then when it gets to the end, because it's tapered slightly on this end, but it's tapered a lot more towards the wheel, so pushing it in through here is easy. Pushing it out, all I did was, because of the washer on the end of my tool, I was able to just hit the juice on the drill a little bit, give it some twist, and it grabbed and pushed it right on through the axle housing over here, because this is significantly smaller than the inlet side. So that seems to be working, and I'll maybe do that 3 or 4 times to see if I can get all the nasties out, and then I'll go from there. But it's looking much better now, and I've got a lot more hope than I did, a couple days ago. Alright, figured I should probably show this since it's not exactly straightforward. To get this in requires pinching or picking 4 points opposite each other like a plus sign and folding them back. And what that does is it leaves 4 humps sticking out. And what you do to get this in here, since this is like a 4 or 5 inch diameter disc, and that's maybe a 2.5 inch ID hole, after folding all those down and getting it in place like this, you kind of wiggle it, pushing in and pulling out. Wiggle it whilst pushing that way, and it goes right in. Of course, this one's been used a few times, so it's probably a bit softer than it was brand new. But then the drill can turn it, and it gets some of this action going on, and then you just run it in and out. And that's how I wound up cleaning quite effectively the inside of my axle tubes. Ay, what a pain. I probably should have just replaced the axle, but whatever.